A really important part of the book, which I think will be of great comfort to many people that are experiencing grief at the moment, is the fact that grief isn't linear. It's not like, there is obviously that cliche that time heals, and I'm sure there's an element of truth in it, but it's not linear. It's not like each day you feel a bit better. And you talk really eloquently about that and how sometimes you were dragged back into the past, or you were dragged back into a really heavy grief after having felt okay about things. And I just think that that's really important for people to hear if they do feel like maybe they're going backwards, if there is such a thing in grief, or they're not where they should be. I find it bizarre that anyone thinks there's a set of rules as to how you're meant to deal with the bit that the grief after someone's gone. This to me seems like you have to have ultimate agency over how you want to deal with that information, processing it, expressing it. Like, why should there be rules as to like... Because me and Jesse talk about this often, that he sometimes goes to me, his mum died very suddenly of a drug overdose 16 years ago. And sometimes he'll just be dragged back there. It could be something he's seen on telly. Yeah. Or it could be someone's said something to him in the day or whatever it might be. And he goes, should I still feel like this 16 years later? And it's like, there's no should to any of it. How can you? We as humans, we don't know what happens after we die. We can't make sense of any of it. It is sort of nonsensical. So, however you want to explore it and express it is the right way, surely.
And to feel it as well. Yeah, because it's the weirdness of life going on is really quite hard to get your head around. Like sometimes I go, "What? Nell's dead. Nell's dead. No, she can't have died. That's my sister. Like, that couldn't have happened. She didn't have cancer 5 years ago, whatever it was now." And I think the kind of, I suppose it's the the long-term aftershocks as well. And I think I'll probably always go on having that feeling. But it is also weird, like the sense that life has changed. Life has changed totally since she died because of the pandemic as well. And time is moving forward and she's moving further into the past. I find that really difficult. And in a way, that those moments of remembering what you were saying about Jessie saying, well, should I feel that? It's actually really, sometimes it's quite nice when you feel really hit by it again as well.
Yeah. And I guess that is the complexity of grief, isn't it? Because grief isn't one thing. It's got this label, but it's got all these little sub-labels of like, anger, frustration, confusion, regret, guilt. Like there's all of these offshoots that you have to deal with within it. And I guess sometimes when you get hit by that big grief where it may be simpler, you just feel bereft and sad, is easier than dealing with all the other bits that come with it. And I know you talk a lot about guilt within the grief and like I was just saying a minute ago, you've got this expectation of it being linear, like anything, where it's you're moving forward, you're moving away from the pain or from the intensity of it, which doesn't exist. And of course, there'll be moments where you have a mundane day, or maybe further down the line, you have a day where you felt truly happy in a moment, joyful, you laughed. And you talk about there being a lot of guilt and actually at times even shame attached to some of that as well.
Yeah, and I think that sort of feeling of the switch, I'm aware of being on a path that like has many different kind of twists and turns in it, and that you do suddenly go backwards, not backwards, but you suddenly get kind of caught short by it or like knocked down. I often think it feels like as though you're walking along, you're completely fine, and then something will happen which takes you back then. Like on Saturday evening, I literally I should have been happy. Everything was fine. Everything was fine at home. The kids were fine. My husband had just come back from being away for ages. But I just had to go and lie down in bed because the pain suddenly of missing Nell was so bad. And also, the shame that you can have in... You have moments of such joy in life. There are moments of such beauty. And the feeling that she isn't here and the feeling that she's missing out on it definitely kind of has taken me back to a moment of, I suppose that's regret really more than shame exactly. But then and also I found sex really interesting as well, because like when you start having sex after somebody has died, and there is a sort of feeling that like sometimes when you've been around death, it makes you want to have sex more. It makes you kind of horny because you're like asserting yourself against, you're asserting your life over death. And I found a desire to have sex in the first, when it happened a couple of weeks, whatever, after Nell had died. I felt very, very complex about that and very confused about that. And how can I be wanting that kind of ecstatic experience?